through the class, but you won't appear in the recording. So if you're not comfortable, now is the time to turn off your camera. And we'll dive in. Maybe, there we go. So I am Grayson. I'm the Outreach Director for Allegheny Mountain Institute. And with me and co-teaching today is Pat, who is Head Market Farmer for AMI and the Farm Manager for the AMI Farm at Augusta Health. AMI is an educational nonprofit organization dedicated to cultivating healthier communities through food and education. And we have two core programs, our Farm and Food Fellowship Program and the AMI Farm at Augusta Health. Both Pat and I are alumni of the Farm and Food Fellowship, and today we're proud to represent the AMI Farm at Augusta Health, which is a production and teaching farm nourishing our hospital and community. We're about a 1.2 acre organically managed vegetable farm on the campus of Augusta Health, and this year we expect to grow about 25,000 pounds of vegetables. That produce will go to use in the hospital food system and in community food security initiatives. The AMI Farm at Augusta Health believes that healthy food is fundamental to excellent preventative health care. We're bringing gardening and food literacy education to people of all ages because today's food choices matter for long-term health. So the way that this webinar is going to work is that I'll be sketching out the topic in really broad strokes, and Pat will fill in some details of how we approach pest management in practice on the AMI Farm at Augusta Health. You're welcome to ask us questions in two different ways. You can unmute your microphone and ask with your voice, or you can use the chat box that you'll find on your Zoom control bar to ask us a question, and we will fill in an answer when it makes sense in the presentation. We'll also take time for questions at the end of the slide set. And if you've got any specific questions about pests you've encountered or practices you've heard that you want to learn more about, feel free to challenge us with those specifics. And we'll do our best to help share our experience or maybe do some research and get back to you. So I'd like to begin with the idea of integrated pest management. You may commonly hear today's topic labeled IPM or integrated pest management. And while the breakdown of each component in IPM neatly describes our approach to pest control at AMI, we refrain from using the term because from a connotation perspective, it puts every approach on the table, even the risky chemical ones that are outside of our values. Still, I do appreciate the framework that the IPM focus lends to decision-making on the farm. It's really a least harm approach, starting from the most eco-friendly method and then moving on to methods that have more drawbacks as your problem becomes more serious and less responsive to what you're trying. It really allows for each grower being able to decide exactly where they personally draw the line of acceptable damage to crops versus collateral risks. Fortunately, in our context on the AMI Farm at Augusta Health, a bit of cosmetic damage is not that concerning for us, not in the same way it would be on a for-profit market farm. For example, if we have kale that looks a little bit lacy from flea beetle damage, but we know that it's going to Augusta Health's cafeteria to be chopped really finely and massaged into a salad, we can recognize that we know it was grown well, the cafeteria knows it's a good product and will taste delicious, and because they're going to chop it finely, it just doesn't matter as much that it didn't start out picture perfect. For a market farmer who relies on farmers market sales or sells in bulk to Whole Foods, it might be more of a deal breaker. And so it makes sense that they may need to draw their line in a different place. We respect that. We know that people have different circumstances, but today we're going to really represent the line that we at AMI draw as far as what is eco-friendly and feels right for our values.
All right. Welcome everybody again. And as Grayson was alluding to just in that last slide about our approach here, or my approach in the farm, my farm at Augusta Health, a little background about myself. This is my third full season on the farm, so I've really gotten a good grasp on seeing, a first time farm come into life and see, the first year it wasn't too much of a problem with a lot of pests just because it's new and they didn't know where we were. But now, we're dealing with it every year. It's becoming more of a, more, not a problem, but more, we need to think about a lot more. And because we know these pests are coming. First and foremost, though, we start with our ecosystem approach. And by ecosystem, we mean like we create an environment for healthy plants to flourish. In more of a conventional farming mindset, it's very non-ecosystem approach. It's very much seclusion, where it's, you're growing a monocrop of one vegetable and nothing else is going to be in there. No bees, no weeds, no spiders. They're kind of, mixing those things through their practices. But it is a growing field, even in the conventional sense, where farms are seeing that creating an ecosystem is allowing for better crops. And by ecosystem, we mean having flowers, having healthy soils, to bring in beneficial insects. And with beneficial insects, get a lot of kind of press these days, where and we'll get into more of which ones we promote. But something that's not talked about a whole lot is beneficial wildlife. That's something we really kind of benefit from just by our locations. That we have there's an old farmhouse, an old barn, an old silo where a lot of bats live. And a bat eats its weight in bugs, or eats its weight and a half of bugs a night. So I think that the bats are helping with our bug problem. We also have a large bird population, and we promote a bird population. They eat a lot of bugs as well. So we try to do a whole ecosystem approach, thinking, broader than just our vegetables. We bring in, like I said, flowers, bugs, animals.
And soil health is a big part of this too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to get more into that with the crop rotation. I think that's coming up here pretty soon.
Great. So as we look at treating problems that may arise on the farm, there are a couple of different categories that we can work through, beginning with cultural practices like changing our growing environment. That's creating more benefits on the farm, and then moving down through physical methods like physically picking bugs off of plants, like creating barriers such as row covers. Biological methods are often introducing those natural predators. And then as a very last resort, we'll talk about the chemicals that we personally are okay with on the farm, all of which are organic rated. So you may, as you research ways to address your particular concerns in the farm or garden, run into these kind of terms. And you might think of this chart as moving from least ecosystem risk at the top down to the highest danger of collateral damage as you move into those chemical methods. It's also worth noting that some categories of strategies require a little bit more patience to see an effect than others. Generally, a mechanical or physical strategy is pretty quick, like physically pulling a bug off your plant. And it also tends to be pretty low impact. We're going to move through each of these strategies in detail in the next several slides.
Yeah, so going to how we approach our our integrated pest management in the farm, it is first and foremost, as Grayson on the last slide alluded to, we start with our cultural and sanitation. And you might wonder why sanitation is on there. And that's due to a few things. When you grow a plant like tomatoes, and they get a blight or a disease that's going to be soil borne, you're going to need that disease is going to be soil-borne there for a year, 2, maybe 3 years, where you're not going to want to grow there. Again, you need to let that soil recover from that disease. And there's a there's methods to sanitize your soil as well. And we can get into that later if we like, but with just different cover crops and whatnot. But we're just going to kind of work down this list and explain how we approach this here at AMI Farm and Augusta Health. The first thing we really do is, number one for me, and I'm a greenhouse guy, seedling guy. I love working in the greenhouse. It's healthy seedlings. If you're going to plant, if you're going to transplant a vegetable, do not transplant something that is looking sickly, or not. Just make sure you're transplanting a really, really strong plant. That's number one. Because if it's if you're gonna plant a weak plant, that's gonna be right away. That's what your pests are gonna attack. It's gonna be that small weak plant, and that also could be a benefit though. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, so we start with crop rotation. Going back to kind of soil health. Healthy soils are going to be healthy vegetables. It's going to lead to healthy people. And to do that is rotating crops and maintaining your soil microbiology and chemical and physical structure. And by doing that, we have 8. If you can see our picture here, there's like eight blocks that I've set out on our farm, and everything's rotated yearly. We're on year 3, so being here for 3 years has been nice to kind of see the benefits of crop rotation. And for not just is it for soil health, with healthy soils, it's going to lead to those healthy plants that are going to fight off these the intruders. It's also going to, by moving your crops yearly, it's also going to avoid overwintered bugs. So some of those are Japanese beetles, Colorado potato beetles, cucumber beetles. They will overwinter in your soil. And we try to do a low till operation. So one of the semi benefits of tilling is that it can kill those bugs. But in my opinion, it causes for, then it gets into your microbiology and your healthy soils when you do that tilling. But by crop rotating, you're moving from, we're moving our cucumber plants into our tomatoes were this year. So we're just physically moving where our plants are going. You notice that, you'll start noticing that too if it's on a kind of larger scale like us, that you'll see these bugs pop up on, like this year I saw cucumber beetles on our lettuce. Not that it wasn't a big deal. They just were there because of the year before. Another way we do, we kind of use our cultural practice with the silage tarps. And if you can see in that picture, the black kind of tarps in the middle of the screen, that's a silage tarp. They're about 30 by 100 feet long. And what they do is solarize the soil, where they'll heat up. They'll help with germinating weeds, but they also help with, kind of killing off the bugs too, because it gets so hot underneath that soil. And something I'm a big believer in is cover cropping. Going back to sanitation, there's the mustard plant, Nebraska plant. You can grow a mustard seed and let it go to flower, and then incorporate that immediately. And it is said to, it's called biofumigating, if you want to look it up, but it's said to, cleanse your soil of all soil-borne disease. I've yet to experiment to have, practical knowledge on it, but something I will be experimenting with this fall. So, and then polyculture, meaning, we grow in a lot of tunnels. In our picture, you can see one of our high tunnels on the right next to that tree line. That's the benefit of that is we seclude a lot of bugs just by closing off at night. We have a few more tunnels on the farm, and we'll be having some more in the future. That's one of the benefits of that. Farmscapes, that's, kind of going back to beneficial wildlife. One thing I want to work on next season is having more perennial farmscapes where there's beneficial trees and flowers and things that are pretty hands-off that I don't have to replant every year, but are going to be there every year. You'll have like birdhouses and just places for our good guys to come in and help us out. And then there's trap cropping, which I was alluding to later. If you want, you can plant crops. Like for example, you can plant a blue Hubbard squash plant. Is said to be very attractive to cucumber beetles. So if you plant that, if you get that blue Hubbard squash out there 2 weeks before you're going to plant your cucumbers or your squash or whatever in your cucurbit family, those bugs will be attracted to that blue Hubbard squash plant. And then you plant your cucumbers 2 weeks later in a different spot. That way you're kind of like making a little diversion. And there are different ways to kill those bugs as well on the blue Hubbard plant, which we've done as well. So there's companion planting. You can companion plant, we companion plant a lot of herbs, cilantro, basil, dill. And when those things go to flower, it's gonna, sorry, I can see these questions popping up on my screen. When they go to flower, so when cilantro, dill, or basil goes to flower, they're going to bring in those beneficial insects along with, a little beauty for the farm. So if you're going to companion plant, let's say basil with tomatoes, it's a common one we use on the farm. When that goes to flower, we leave it for, a few weeks to bring in pollinators, bring in, wasps, stuff like that. So, yeah. Next slide. So interplanting is something we commonly do, kind of similar to companion planting, to kind of get intertwined a lot. One of the benefits of interplanting is the soil structure and the soil biology. The more roots you have in your soil, the healthier the soil is going to be. So we try to maximize with, as you can see in this picture, we have lettuce going down looks like our broccoli rows. It's must have been from last year. And we're getting, not only on a practical level, we're getting multiple crops out of this row. We're getting a row of broccoli along with 100 feet of lettuce. But it's also good for the soil to have, more roots, or more roots in that soil is going to lead to a healthier soil environment, which are healthier plants as well. I'm going to admit that we're still playing around with it. You don't want to plant like broccoli 5 inches away apart from each other by any means, but you can experiment with, if you look at a broccoli row like this one, you can get a crop out of that row. It's going to lead to healthier soils. So this is more, to define interplanting and companion planting, I would, call this picture we are looking at more interplanting with lettuce, where companion planting would be more, I would say, beneficial to with tomatoes and basil. This is kind of a myth, but basil's said to make the tomatoes sweeter. So stuff like that. I'd say this is more, or like flowers than a vegetable. You're not. That's companion planting. I'd say interplanting is more just with what we're seeing here.
Okay, I'm going to pause, and I don't know if this is going to work, but I had a question about what does a cucumber beetle look like. I can't pull in a picture while we're sharing my screen, but I'm going to hold up my phone and see if you can see some images of cucumber beetles here. That is what we're looking at when we're talking about cucumber beetles.
And I've seen all three of those on our farm. There's the spotted ones and the striped cucumber beetles. And the striped cucumber beetles are said to carry bacterial wilt, which is the most common disease in cucumber, more so than the spotted ones.
Yeah, that's a great thing to mention too, is that when we are concerned about pest problems on our farm, pest populations, it's not only the damage that they leave behind, it's also the fact that they are often the vector for different vegetable diseases, fungal diseases, as well as soil-borne. So addressing our pest problems can often lead to better health in that way for our plants too.
Yep, absolutely.
So now we're moving into the physical mechanical category of solutions. And these are some of the most frequently employed solutions on the AMI farm at Augusta Health.
Yeah, we use, so we got our, we start with what we, with the healthy plants and getting that into healthy soils. But then, we're not oblivious to the fact that, pests are going to show up. So we try to then block them with what we use a lot is insect netting. And there's a difference between row cover and insect netting. Row cover is typically like a woven, like kind of blanket-esque fabric that heats up when you put it on and make your tunnels, as you see in the picture on the right. And they're beneficial for both. They're beneficial for keeping insects out, and creating a warmer atmosphere. But what we deal with especially right now during this season, is we have a lot of bug pressure, especially with our fall broccoli and cabbage and kale. So we use what's called insect netting, and it's it's the same kind of fabric, but it's a little more porous, and it doesn't hold heat in at all, and it provides a little bit of shade. So this insect netting is it's kind of gaining in popularity. It's quite expensive, but it's definitely beneficial. We've used the same 100-foot rows. This is our probably third or fourth time using it this year. And you can pick any of these up at, if you're in the area, if you've heard of Valley Produce Supply in Dayton, that's a great place to pick it up. But if you're looking for online ordering, Johnny's Selected Seed sells them. And there's a few other places that we can talk about. I can't think of them right now, but online, Johnny's is the best for getting row cover. But what we do is we just put up these quick hoops. I don't know if you can see them. You can kind of see them formed on the right there. And we just hold the netting down with sandbags. You have to create a tight atmosphere, to keep those bugs out. But it does work, and we've seen great success with it in the past.
It is important to make sure that you get it sealed down as tightly as possible, and also to visit your plants periodically. Make sure you didn't catch something you didn't intend to. Pat did release a bird from our row cover earlier this season. That was a bit of excitement, but no wildlife was injured.
Yeah, it's actually more common than not. It's a bird, getting in there to eat probably one of our bugs gets caught, but never had. They've all gotten out. Another unique kind of thing we do here is we use Macallan clay. It's it's pretty popular clay. It's actually used in a lot of toothpaste apparently, but we use it on the farm. It kind of creates a white barrier, as you can see in the picture, and I can't remember the ratio we use, but what we do is we use our eggplant is a big problem for us and big problem probably for most people here. It's just everything loves eggplant. Big flea beetle problem with eggplant here on our farm right now. But at the start, what we do is we use this kaolin clay. We make a mixture of it, and I can't think of the ratio off the top of my head. And we in a 5-gallon bucket, and then we dip the plant, and it comes out looking like this ghost-like plant right now, or that you see in the picture. Then we plant it, and then we cover it with that insect netting I was just talking about. So immediately it's going on, and that kaolin clay will stick on there until it rains. What it does is create this, creates a barrier. The plant is still able to photosynthesize, but pests are not able to eat it. So it works wonders really. We've used it we use it on our eggplant, and we use it on our cucurbits, our squash, our cucumbers, watermelon, stuff like that. And then I'm actually thinking about experimenting with it on some brassicas this fall, because right now we're having a hard time with cabbage moths and an interesting pest that I still actually don't know what it is that showed up, another caterpillar. So I'm interested in trying it with that. But yeah, it's a great non-spray, OMRI-listed organic method for more pest control. So.
And if you're looking for this product, the brand name it's sold under is Surround.
That's another great place to buy products in the area is a place called Seven Springs. I guess not really in the immediate area, but Seven Springs Farm out of Floyd, Virginia, is one we use quite often as well. And they carry Surround.
So now we're going to move into the biological category. Biological combines both beneficial predators and an interesting compound called BT that we'll get to in just a moment. But first, beneficial predators.
Yeah. So once we have we've done our cultural, we've had a row cover on. Now it comes time to we get to uncover these plants at some point, and introduce them to the wild. And bugs are going to come onto your plants. And what a good example of what happened this year is with our tomatoes, we put them in our high tunnels, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. Well, we had a large aphid problem that stemmed from a lot of different things. But the fact is they were in there, we had them trellised up, and they're getting pretty eaten. And we bought, you can actually buy beneficial predators. And some of these beneficial predators you can buy are ladybugs. That's a top right, the green lacewings on the bottom right. We purchased both of those for our tunnel to eat aphids. Actually, interesting enough, the green lacewing, the adults actually don't even eat the aphids. Their larvae eat the aphids. So it's trying to keep those lacewings around to lay the eggs. But you have to the hardest part about beneficial predators, you really have to believe in them. That's something I struggled with in the spring, is that, you see these aphids on your plants, and before acting, and we did act with a OMRI-listed spray at one point, but you really have to believe in your beneficial predators. It's that they're going to be there and they're going to show up eventually, because they did, and we don't have a problem with aphids in the greenhouse or in their high tunnel anymore. So the way, like I said, the way they operate is, ladybugs eat aphids, lacewings eat aphids. They also eat cucumber beetle larvae too, so they're very beneficial, both ladybugs and lacewings. And then there's also, those are kind of two big ones you can actually purchase in. So you can buy these bugs on Arbico Organics. It's ARBICO, and they'll come in just a bottle, and you release them. There'll be instructions how to release them. The thing I often struggled with, or I was thinking about this spring because this is my first year doing this, is how to keep these bugs around. So we planted some beneficial rows in our companion planted some marigolds in our high tunnel. And when we bought these bugs, in hopes that the lacewings would, stay around, because I researched how lacewings, they need pollen to live, and pollen and water. So we threw some flowers in there, and we had a large population by, I'd say June. And I bought them, released them probably early May. And then other kind of beneficials that just, I guess, show up on the farm due to beneficial ecosystem we're talking about is just parasitic wasps. So they'll specifically target, caterpillars, your cabbage moths. We really need them right now. But that last slide that Grayson was on, there's a picture of a tomato hornworm that you might be familiar with, but that's a parasitized hornworm. So they lay their larvae. Those are parasitic eggs on that hornworm. It's pretty gnarly. But if you ever see this in your garden, don't intervene. Let the larvae hatch. That hornworm is not going to do any more damage to your plant, and you're going to get more parasitic wasps coming your way. So I feel like I missed something there, Grayson. If you have anything to
you're
add.
good. So it's pretty crazy the way that parasitism happens. The eggs actually hatch from within the caterpillar and destroy the caterpillar on their way out. It's one of those episodes of nature being cruel and both fascinating and really gross at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a little bit more on green lacewings. I really love them and believe in them. Is that those adults, they lay a larvae. They lay their larvae off the stem of the plant, so you see a really thin line with an egg on the end of it. If you pay really close attention to your tomato plants, or if you have twine, you'll see it's stringy line with an egg on the end of it. If you see a lot of ants around your plants and crawling up and going into your cucumbers or your tomatoes, there's a high chance you have a large aphid issue, because ants feed off the aphid excrement. So. And it's kind of crazy too, because ants are the biggest predators for lacewing eggs. So it's kind of this crazy, intertwined system that is happening inside on one tomato plant, where the lacewing larvae are eating the aphids, the ants are feeding off the the aphid excrement while also eating green lacewing eggs, which it's wild. So been a fun thing to learn about this year. And observe a lot of it.
So BT, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, is Bacillus thuringiensis. I'm hopeful that none of you know if I pronounced that correctly or incorrectly. But this is something that Pat and I have a little bit of experience with through AMI's fellowship program. And we've chosen not to use it so far on the AMI farm at Augusta Health. It is essentially a bacterial derivative that we have found a way to spray onto plants, and it's particularly good with brassicas, to be eaten by caterpillars. Once it is eaten by the caterpillars, it paralyzes their digestive tract so that they cannot survive. It has supposedly very little effect on the rest of the garden ecosystem, and it's considered harmless to mammals. However, it has a lot of warnings on it about how you use the product, which loosely paraphrased say things like, don't breathe while you pour this product and dilute it with water. Makes me a little bit nervous. In some ways, it's like we are releasing a disease onto our insect population. Can be really effective if your brassicas, especially cabbage, is being eaten by caterpillars, but you decide how you feel about the possible costs. Also want to mention insecticidal soaps, and these kind of straddle the barrier between a biological and a chemical solution. What an insecticidal soap does is it disrupts the cell membrane of a soft-bodied insect. It gets rid of the waxy coating that they have that protects themselves. So in theory, this would work on an aphid, thrips, whiteflies, mites, young leafhoppers. But it's a contact insecticide, so it needs to actually touch the pest to be effective, which means you need to keep spraying it fairly often to make sure that you are getting that full insect population to really have a strong effect. But as you can see with the ingredient list below, all of the things that are going into this insecticidal soap are really mild. They're things found in your kitchen, things that you can extrapolate if they were to get on your skin, you really wouldn't have to worry about. So it can be a solution that if you are not having a lot of success with other methods you've tried, this is a pretty mild one to start with and see if it has any effect. We at AMI, between our two farms, have tried this for several different pest populations, including aphids, but also including rabbits, because that red pepper spiciness can sometimes deter them from chewing. So it's a good broad range solution to try for a number of different pests.
Another insecticide I guess we use is neem oil, and this honestly is probably the harshest we go at the current time, but I'm not gonna make any stances because I'm always open to new ideas, and I can be proven wrong. So yeah, it's derived from the neem tree. It has insecticidal and fungicidal properties, so I've used it for two things this season. One was the aphid problem that I was alluding to earlier. At one point, I'm believing in the beneficial insects, and then it got so bad that we had to get in there. It worked, and we had an insecticidal soap, not one that we homemade. We actually bought a bottle from I can't remember where. Actually, I think it was the Arbico Organics that I alluded to earlier, but with the ladybugs and the lacewings. And we made a mixture of the neem oil and insecticidal soap, and that knocked them back pretty good. And after I sprayed that, knocked them all down, then I released those. Then I released another round of lacewings. So it worked out, and that was the last time we acted in our greenhouse on those aphids. So like it said here in our second point here, it's very effective against soft body aphids, stuff like that, but you're not gonna kill adult beetles or true bugs, like it said. And that's kind of true in a lot of instances with when you deal with cucumber beetles or Japanese beetles. I haven't heard of much. We don't really act a whole lot with those kind of beetles, but from what I've read and heard, that it's really hard to knock them back with organic methods. So preventative is going to be the best option when it comes to real beetles. But then something we experimented with last year a bit, and we'll be doing here soon, is with can help with bacterial wilt, early blight, those fungicidal diseases. Neem is said to have those properties, and I remember seeing a bit of success with it last year. But right now, I remember doing it about right now last season with the neem, but it's kind of hard to at this point because we're on our fourth succession of cucumber plantings, and at that point, I just know it's gonna be our worst one, because as you go with your seasons, the earlier you plant, like if you want a good cucumber crop, you have a healthy cucumber transplant right after that frost date, and that's going to be your best cucumber. You can continue to have cucumbers all year. It's just that one is more than likely going to produce and be better for production. So, but that being said, our last round of cucumbers is looking really good right now. So, again, yeah.
So I want to note here that there are so many organic rated pesticides, and the organic rating generally is a little bit more liberal than AMI about what we are willing to use on our crops. The research out there is always evolving, finding some new solutions, but it's still a new field. We are in many cases still part of the experimentation about the long-term effects of some of these chemicals and some of these solutions. So we'll leave it to you to decide for yourself where you're comfortable. I want to say a few things about spraying anything. Some general practices on if you are spraying, as much as possible, know your pest and your pesticide. Spray with caution. Make sure that you are reading all of the ingredients on whatever material you're using and using it at the right dilution, using the appropriate protective clothing, gloves, sometimes eye protection, and wash your hands immediately afterward. And this is really important for our current predicament, where it has hardly stopped raining for the last several weeks. You want to choose a calm day, and if possible, an evening to do any application, because if you are spraying midday on a sunny day, you can create a little droplet magnifying lens that can strengthen the sun damage to your plant. Likewise, if you are spraying or applying any product right before rain, very little of it may stay on your plant and it may affect your soil instead. And you also want to be a little bit careful about drift, not only because you may miss your target, but also because you may end up affecting some of your beneficial populations in a way that we really want to steer clear of. Now, before we leave applications and move into a few of our usual pest suspects, I did have a question about diatomaceous earth. Pat, do you want to talk a little bit about DE and if there are any places you recommend putting it to use?
I have not used diatomaceous earth, and I've been recommended it a lot. The reason why I'm very cautious with diatomaceous earth, and I can't remember, it's a glassy, is it a bone marrow? Like what it does is it cuts the soft-bodied insects when they walk across it. I don't know I can't remember what its contents are. And the only issue I have is that I really don't believe in disturbing like a soil structure like that, where, if it's going to cut your beneficial, if it's going to kill plant or your bad bugs, that's also going to crush shell. Thank you, Denise. It's going to also do that to your beneficial like microbiology in the soil. Cool. So, and that, I've been tempted to try it, and I would encourage to try it out because I know a lot of people had success with it, but I'm just cautious on adding anything like anything that's not going to be completely beneficial to the soil. Whether, we add compost and amendments, but in terms of diatomaceous, I steer away from. So I don't have a whole lot of, practice or opinions on it. And just want to speak a little bit to spraying too. And I don't think we added a slide here, Grayson, but we're not no spray. And what there's a lot of research goes out there is to, eliminating insects. There's not a lot of research out there. And what I'm really passionate about, interested in, is the beneficial sprays. So we spray a lot of, fish emulsion, compost tea, stuff like that. We're creating, again, going back to the culture, we want to create this beautiful plant. And you can do that by spraying beneficial, like, sprays on that plant, and not necessarily stuff that's going to, kill the pest. So that's kind of a world that's, we could teach an entire class on, but, we spray compost teas, we spray fish emulsion. We do enough of spraying, but it's just not a spray. When spraying is said, that you're automatically thinking pesticide, and that's not necessarily what we're doing. So we want to create, a healthy plant. We do that until the end of its life. And then at some point here we can, chalk it up or do a succession planting of the next round. So.
Also had a question about pheromone traps for beetles. Any words of wisdom there? I have read, as I was researching this class, you have to be really careful with pheromone traps because sometimes you may just pull in your neighbor's pests as well as your own.
Yeah, I don't have experience with pheromone traps. I do have experience with yellow sticky traps. I know that's not necessarily a similar thing. Thank you. I've read the research I've done on pheromone traps, exactly like Grayson, that you're kind of running the risk of actually creating a bigger problem by doing that, by getting more bugs than actually might come to your farm or garden. So I don't have a ton of practicality on that, but in terms of, I guess I was talking about sticky traps, we use yellow traps I tried using them this year with cucumber beetles. So we had a large early on cucumber beetle problem. So we bought these yellow sticky traps. You can just, I think, Googling it, and Amazon will pop up with a bunch of them. But cucumber beetles are attracted to yellow. So they get on these traps and they're stuck. However, I just noticed a lot of other bugs like flies and bees were getting stuck on there too. So I took them down because I was thinking I was being like counterintuitive with it, where I don't know, I just didn't feel good about it. So bird, man, that's bad. Feel so bad if that happened. That'd be terrible. Cool.
All right, so let's look at, look at my click, a few of the usual suspects. Now, we just profiled 3 of our worst offenders on the farm. There will be more, and we're happy to add to them as folks bring up what is troubling your garden this season.
Yeah, so flea beetles are one of the largest, pests on our farm currently. It's having its way with our eggplant as we speak. But we've been, as talking about earlier, we took all the precautions of using kaolin clay and row cover and all that stuff, and it works really well until you have to uncover it. And then the flea beetles have a fair game, but we've produced a lot of eggplant this year, and we'll do so for the rest of the year. But they're just it's not as healthy as I would like it to be. But that's just the risk we're running. Very small bites on your plants. If you're seeing that, you can kind of see in this picture those little kind of, I don't know, whitish spots will be the flea beetle. The flea beetle damage. A lot of what you'll see them mostly on is eggplant, like I said, and also like your grow arugula, which is a leafy brassica green, mustards, like Asian greens, bok choy, stuff like that. You don't typically see it on broccoli or cabbage, but those are the brassicas that I've dealt with in the past. And Usually with cover, it works. Right now, though, it's hard during the summertime because we're trying to get these. We're trying to push these. Like we planted our brassicas throughout the month of August. And we're trying to push them to grow in a very, very hot climate, which they do not like. So they're more prone to flea beetles and pest damage right now. Where we're hoping that they rebound in September when it starts to cool off, hopefully. So who knows this year though. Anything to add on flea beetles, Grayson?
They're sneaky little boogers. They're absolutely tiny, and it's hard to keep a really good seal. That's one place that I feel like we've been a little bit more successful using our insect netting than our row cover or remay, just because that row cover product is really prone to tearing. And if somebody sticks a fingernail through it and we create a little hole, they will find it. So
yeah,
reusing.
In terms of acting, like what you can do, what we've done is, you can't, one thing we really talked about, and we'll get to a little bit, is like, you can like pick off the pest and eliminate them by your help, like with a bucket and some soapy water, squishing them. That is effective. It's something I've done in the past too, even though we have a large area. I've learned that, especially with cucumber beetles and squash bugs and Japanese beetles, if you can kind of get ahead of them a bit, you can really knock back their population. I've heard that diatomaceous earth does work against flea beetles. I've also, in terms of spraying, Neem Oil. I know this product, OMRI listed product, not that I'd necessarily recommend it, but a farmer friend of mine uses a lot, is spinosad. So if you're looking for like that, a more intense product that is not as, as organically OMRI listed, that's one to go with. All right, next one is Cabbage Moths. Again, like I was saying earlier, we're dealing with this right now. Cabbage moths, cabbage loopers, they're the green worms on your broccoli and your cabbage and almost all your brassicas. They definitely they're taking large amounts out of your baby transplants. And they're usually going to be, once they're bigger, they're going to be found on the younger tender plants, which is unfortunate. So those are, when you're seeing that kind of damage, like the half a leaf missing, it's more than likely going to be your cabbage moths. Again, healthy transplants are going to help you out, but right now we're struggling with that on our transplants, even because it's just that time of year. Again, row cover is going to be most effective. Also, be effective is just kind of inspecting your plant before planting. This is what we're doing right now. Is every seedling, we're kind of just giving a quick once over, taking off the baby cabbage moths and hand picking them. And it's been said that onions and dill are going to be your companion plants to put with them that are going to deter the moths. But right now, as we talked about a little bit too, is that it's the season for parasitic wasps. They're about to be setting in as well, so we're going to have some our good guys are coming in to help us out. Where in the early spring we don't have a lot of pollinators out, so it's kind of it's more of us trying to keep them off than any help. So yeah, and in terms of acting and spraying, Grayson was talking about BT earlier. That's going to be your kind of next step. But again, I recommend healthy transplants. Picking off if you're going through your garden weeding, do a little inspection. There's usually only one or two on your plant. It's not gonna be too big a deal, but.
And I can't emphasize enough, if you are like me and a little bit squeamish about picking and squishing bugs, designated pair of squashing gloves does the trick. I can't do it if they touch my skin, but I can put on my big girl squash gloves and take them out. We've talked a lot about these guys, the aphids.
Yeah. So I can just tell you, I guess, the story around our aphid problem. We didn't have a greenhouse for a while, and we kind of created this humid atmosphere inside of our high tunnel where we're growing our seedlings to start off, and aphids got right on our seedlings. So we had a bunch of tomato plants with aphids on them right away. So we're kind of doomed at the start. I actually came in one point for our field tomatoes that we planted. There's so many aphids on them that I was like, I'm either going to compost these, but I'm going to spray them off. So one option, as you can see now, there's hose them off, literally worked. I turned my hose on. I'd probably had 300 tomato plants, and I just turned on full blast and just washed them all off, and they were gone. Still harvesting tomatoes off those plants. It's actually one of the miracles of this year. But yeah, so that's one thing I didn't talk about in terms of getting aphids off, is that just spraying them off with a hose or, a backpack spray or something. They're not good climbers. Yeah, and then we talked about, I'll go back into lacewings and ladybugs and those beneficials. And the best thing for, is early on is insecticidal soap. If you're gonna need to spray. Yeah, and they, if you're gonna spray, and something I grapple with too is that if you decide that I need to spray some insecticide soap, don't wait until it's really, really bad, because then at that point you're running the risk of just losing your plant all in general. So there's a fine line to walk between this is getting bad and that's when you should spray versus like this isn't so bad and maybe I should wait a bit. So there's a medium point. If you're like too far gone on your plant, like say you have a cabbage plant that's getting eaten by cabbage loopers, and it's wholly everywhere. You're not going to be able to go in there and spray and kill these bugs and still produce this beautiful cabbage plant. At that point, you've kind of lost, in my opinion, you've lost that plant. So like making a decision before it gets too bad is what you need to do or not do. So either or.
It's also worth mentioning that this is one situation where really knowing your pests can be to your benefit. So we know that aphids like humidity, they like really still conditions. So sometimes in combination with some of your other methods, you can see some benefit by pruning your plant to increase airflow a little bit, getting a fan in if you're working in a greenhouse or high tunnel, getting that air moving just to make their lives a little bit harder may knock your population back a little bit, where that your other methods work better and you can get things a little bit more under control. So we are now going to take some questions, and we have a few coming in from the comments. I know we owe an answer about Japanese beetles. Any advice for Japanese beetles? Also want to say a few more things about which pest populations hibernate in the soil that you need to worry about and how to deal with that. And then we will take questions from the rest of the audience. You want to start with Japanese beetles?
Yeah. So Japanese beetles, they're a pesky one, but one that leaves right about early August. So they don't stick around all year, which is one of the benefits. What I've found in my time here is the best thing I've done for Japanese beetles is plant zinnias. We plant a lot of flowers on the farm as a trap crop. So we plant zinnias. We don't necessarily we're not like zinnia farmers. We're just trying to grow vegetables here, but we do have flowers that we enjoy and we bouquet and we give the community too. But zinnias are, I don't know what it is, but Japanese beetles love zinnias. And we also plant a lot of plants that Japanese beetle like: sweet potatoes, okra, zinnias, eggplant, and they're on. I'm gonna be honest, they're on all of them right now, but they're not doing a lot of damage because our plants are so healthy, and they're almost gone at that point. I've never acted in terms of spray with Japanese beetles. I have handpicked. If a population gets really big, I'll go in and handpick in the morning and just kind of put them in a bucket with some soap. So that's how I've acted with Japanese beetles.
As far as bug populations that stay in the soil over the winter, we talked a little bit about cover cropping, and that's one really great method to make that environment less conducive to bugs. Any others you want to hold up, Pat?
Yeah, and just talking about going back to crop rotation is trying to move those. And I know on the scale of ours, it's easy to do, but if you're on a home garden scale, just try to plant your cucumbers on the other side of your garden the next year, just to kind of keep them guessing, or not guessing, but when they I guess germinate is the only word I can think of, because that's how I think. But when they come to life in the spring, they're not right on a cucumber plant. And I use that, but cucumbers is one of those. Japanese beetles as well. They'll overwinter in the soil. So same with aphids too, unfortunately. So.
Okay, we're right at 6 p.m., but happy to stay around for a few minutes if folks have other questions. You're welcome to continue using the chat box, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself if you've got a question you want to work through with us. Thanks so much for being part of our class this evening. And you've got my contact info on the screen. If you want to send us a question, we're happy to research and get back to you. Thanks to you all for joining us.
Thank you. Fun, awkward silence. I can sing for everybody.
Let me, we have a question about squash borers.
Borers. They are the most difficult thing I would say, to deal with, because they're hard to detect. They're going to lay, red eggs on the underside of your squash plants. And if you don't act, obviously you can pick them off, or I've heard that spraying spinosad or, some kind of knockdown spray is going to help with that, but they're so hard to detect because they burrow into your plant. We've had them here and I've dealt with them. However, I'd say my contact's 100 feet of squash is how I operate. We could lose 3 to 4 of those at any given time, and I'm okay with that. Versus, I've never lost like a mass the entire row to vine borers, but I don't have a whole lot of. I've never had to act with vine borers, so I don't have a lot to speak about it.
I don't have any firsthand experience with them, but I do have notes from a conference I was at 2 years ago that they offered the suggestion of you can try to make little tinfoil collars around the bottom of your squash plants and get that tinfoil collar buried just like half an inch into the soil. Tends to have some effect and may protect that crucial bit of space where the squash vine borers typically chew. It's a really low impact solution, so maybe worth a try. Okay, it seeming like we've answered everybody's questions. If you're still with us and you've got a question in your mind, or you think of one in the next couple of days, feel free to get in touch with us, send us an email, and we are happy to do some research and get a good answer to you. Thanks again for being part of our class tonight. And as a registered participant, you'll be getting a recorded version of our class in your email in the next few days in case you want to see us again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.